Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Thursday, April 24th, 2025, and today we're going to talk about the first farm tools to buy for your farm, living pathway crops, and killing those pesky crops once you're done with them. So let's do it. All right, well, welcome to Thursday, friends, or TGIF, if you're on the other side of the world from me. I didn't have the most interesting of days yesterday. Did some spot weeding in the garlic and prepped the tunnel for some basil and cucumbers, hilled up the potatoes a bit, then had some random paperwork to do, which I will spare you the boring details. The season is starting to feel alive, though, and so so far I feel pretty good about it. There have been seasons where going into May, I've been like, I'm going to be chasing the season all year and never catch up. But I don't feel that way so much this year. I think it will be a bit of a slower start than normal for me production-wise, just because, well, it's mostly just me in the garden right now until school ends and Hannah is back during the day. But all that winter cleanup and preparation is certainly paying off, at least for now. Also, shout out to allergies. Lots of allergies going on right now. Anyway, as has become our tradition, we use our Thursdays to catch up on Patreon questions. If you ever want to support our show, that is a superb way to do it, and I will even answer your question to the best of my ability right here on the show. So today's first Patreon question comes from Patreon member Gasper Mestas, who writes, quote, "Hello, I am brand new to farming and will attempt to do dry farming. We are on half an acre, but our small house lives in the middle of it. We live in the high desert Southwest. Given a budget of a few $100s, what should I focus on for tools and equipment? I know there was a comprehensive tool video, but I wasn't able to determine the hierarchy of what should come first," end quote. Okay, so great question. And obviously some of this will depend on the scale you would like to grow on and the current condition of the soil and your markets and those sorts of things. But I will give you what I personally would look at first. So I did a show about the parts of a farm to invest in back in December, November. I think it was like in the 50s of this show. So whatever that would have been. I'll find it and put it in the show notes. And there's also a thread at the No-Till Growers Forum on this exact subject that will help as well. Those will give you some good guidelines for what to think about when it comes to what you're going to purchase for each specific part of farming. I guess next, you probably need to think about some soil prep stuff. I've often said I could run my farm on a trowel, a good shovel, a rake, a stirrup hoe, and a wheelbarrow, and I pretty much stand by that. I mean, it's not the most efficient, but you could get by pretty far for pretty long that way. And sure, it's nice to have a few tools and options like a broad fork and maybe a tilter and different sizes of and types of hose, a gritter. I love my gritter, but just those few things will get you pretty far to start. For harvest, a knife and some totes is a fine starting point as well. Not sure if you're going to be selling the produce. It sounds like you're starting a farm, but if so, you'll have to think about washing and packing. For washing, staying on the bare minimum front, get a large food-safe wash tote and a couple hoses. You will also need a way to dry the produce, so some sort of drying rack as well, either built yourself or prefab, though prefab will likely be more expensive. If you're drying greens, you can convert an old washing machine to a salad spinner or buy one of those hand-cranked ones, but those are less effective and can be more expensive. I've heard of people using mesh food-safe bags and spinning those over their heads, like literally just like, I don't know, like a sling to dry the greens as a lo-fi solution. I have never tried that, but for a small amount of greens, sure. For 50 or 100 pounds, that would be a lot of work. It'd be a lot of spinning. You'd get really strong, but it'd be a lot of spinning. For cooling, on a small scale, you can get pretty far with a large refrigerator or two, or buy a CoolBot and AC unit and just shove them in an unused closet or something, or just freeze bottles of water and use those to cool off large hunting coolers. Like we have these large coolers that we bring to market, and we just use frozen water bottles in there to kind of keep them cool through the day. Now, if you do plan to sell, you'll need to think about not only what you plan to pack the vegetables into, but marketing equipment as well. So like tents and tables, etc. You will need a scale also. Tools and equipment wise, that's a good list to start with. Obviously, there are things like seeders and mowing equipment that you'll need. Any sort of seed starting stuff, that just depending on if you want to buy your plants to start or if you want to start them yourself. I really recommend going through that post at the forum and kind of just taking notes as you go to each individual part of farming. So yeah, tools and equipment wise, that's a pretty good list to start with. As you can see, it's unfortunately not as simple as just buy these few things, because like I've said before, starting a farm is like not just starting a business, but starting a business that also produces the raw ingredients for what it sells, which most businesses do not begin there. I mean, many businesses don't ever get there. Most businesses outsource their sort of widget production, buying in things they need to make their product. Not us. We grow the widgets. We do it all. Everything from production to marketing. Farming is a bonkers business in that way. Again, I know I harp on these things a lot, but there is no easy way to break into this business with no or low capital. But it is, it's possible. It's just a lot of work. We did it. It sucked, but it definitely can be done if you're willing to put the energy into it and willing to start somewhere low and have a goal of what you need each step along the way. Now, if you're just trying to garden and maybe slowly move into farming, you can totally do it for pretty cheap and slowly acquire more as you grow. I also cannot emphasize enough how valuable it is to just do an enterprise budget and write out the crops you want to grow, like each crop that you're planning to grow, and then what you will need for each of those and how much it will cost both upfront and annually to produce each one individually and then all of them together. Treat the farm like a business, because that is exactly what it is, even if it is also, so much more than that. Great question and best of luck. I hope I was at least a little bit helpful. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll talk about killing crops that just won't die. Looking at you, kale, wherever you are. BRB. Today's episode is brought to you by Farmhand. I started a CSA to grow food and build community, not to drown in admin work. Spreadsheets, emails, and pack lists take up too much time. If I could spend less time at my desk and more in the field, that'd be a win. Enter Farmhand. Farmhand automates billing, newsletters, websites, and member support, saving CSA farmers 20 plus hours a week. Focus on farming, not paperwork. See how Farmhand can help. Book a one-on-one demo with founder Ari at farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener, are enjoying this content, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's second Patreon question comes from Patreon member Robert, who asks, quote, "Hey, Jesse, appreciate all you and the team do. Question, have you ever cut kale away right at or below the soil after the winter frost comes and kills it, and then in spring it's grown back? I was outside doing some seasonal prep work this week and noticed a few small kale plants sprouting from the soil. I've never had that happen before. I'm wondering if going forward I should use some alternate method of eliminating the kale root system after it's done for the season, or attempt to figure out how to get all the plants to regrow in spring and just have a dedicated area for kale. I plan on putting my summer squash where the kale sprouts are coming up. Anyway, good luck this season with all the crazy weather events lately. It seems like we'll all need it." End quote. Thanks, Robert, and great question. Good luck to you this season. I know I say this regularly, but my biggest weeds are almost always the last crop I grew. And this is especially true of kale that just does not want to die, which is a trick I wish it would teach the cucumbers. But basically, what I recommend, and of course many other farms like Singing Frogs Farm, some of my favorites, is where I kind of first came across this concept. What we recommend is that when it comes to turning over a bed from one crop to another is to leave the roots in the ground as much as possible so they can slowly decompose and feed the soil. Crops like squash, lettuce, and others are relatively easy to kill by just cutting them at the soil surface level. Kale, not so much. It's an ornery thing, so it will often come back if you just cut it at the surface, and sometimes even when you cut it just below the surface level. So what to do about it? Well, to be honest, I don't do much of anything. I cut it as low on the stalk as makes sense for whatever I'm doing and how much ever time I have, usually with loppers. And then I plan to plant something that is easy to cultivate with the next season. So not, for instance, arugula or mixed lettuce, but something like tomatoes or maybe summer squash, like you mentioned. Then I just hit them again with a stirrup hoe or pick out the volunteers as I plant the next crop and as they pop up. In other words, I expect some returners. What you don't want is to have to deal with those returners invading, say, a cut green where you would have to physically pick them out of either after you harvest or before you harvest. Lettuce heads, when you cut them down really low, will occasionally come back, but it's just the same thing. It's a weed that I hit once with a stirrup hoe, and that usually does the trick. Or at very least, it sets that returning crop back, so that by the time I get through the next crop, the one that it's growing into, that lettuce that's trying to regrow is done. For me, I find them mostly benign, these weeds, but certainly for others, they're going to present a problem, especially if you're kind of type A and you like everything super, super clean. So if it's just not in the cards to deal with the little bit of extra regrowth, just yank the crop by hand and take it to the compost pile. You will lose a little soil organic matter that way and maybe some microbes and nutrients, but it will save you the effort the next spring of having to pick out those, regrowth. I do really like to leave the roots in there though. On the soil health front, if you left that crop's roots in the ground and then pulled the root up several months after the crop, that it dies, you will see worms and all sorts of stuff just chowing down in that root system, which is what you want and very cool. Just a very slow decomposition and re-release of those nutrients. Everyone's context and tolerance for regrowth of old crops is different, so just make sure to do what makes the most sense for you. More often than not, I'm just mowing an old crop, whatever it is, very, very low to the ground, putting in the next crop, and then just expecting to hit the old crop in a few spots with a stirrup hoe when it starts growing back, which I can do standing up and takes almost no time. So I prefer that. But I have a high, maybe too high, tolerance for wildness in the garden. So that will not be everybody's thing. And I should belatedly add here that this desire to regrow from plants will obviously apply to other brassicas, such as collards and potentially some mustards, among others. Then crops like chicory that regrow easily from their roots can be difficult to terminate in this way too. It's hard to leave the roots in the ground when that's kind of where they get all their energy. They just want to live, and it can be hard to kill them. Who can fault them? Anyway, great question, and I hope that was somewhat helpful. Up next, we'll take one more Patreon question for this day. This one on, speaking of wildness, living pathways and diversity. Be right back. Today's episode is also brought to you by FarmRaise. Still using QuickBooks for your farm's bookkeeping? You're wasting time and losing money. Farm finances can be overwhelming, but they don't have to be. FarmRaise Tracks is the all-in-one tool built just for farmers. Manage expenses, prep for taxes, run payroll, and plan for the future without spreadsheets or stress. Just clear, organized insights to keep your operation thriving. Thousands of farmers trust Tracks to make smart financial decisions all year long. It's time you did too. Use code NOTIL20, that's all caps, no spaces, NOTIL20 for 20% off the life of your membership at farmraise.com. All right, back to the show. All right, our third and final Patreon question of the day from the folks who truly do help make this show possible over there at patreon.com/no-till-growers comes to us from Patreon member Billy Reese, who writes, quote, I've been chewing on this dilemma for too long and I need to get seed down soon. I'm a flower grower and use Dutch white clover in my pathways. However, last fall I expanded production. I have 5-foot strips of bare ground at the ends of my new blocks, several 5-foot by 100-foot areas. The wider pathway is also currently bare. Between newly planted woody ornamental and peonies, I want to increase the diversity of living pathways rather than just use white Dutch clover in those areas. I considered alfalfa and Roman chamomile mix at the end of the rows, but questioning the choice of alfalfa. Any suggestions on increasing diversity of perennial ground cover with moderate foot traffic in Zone 4B, now questionable Zone 5 according to the new maps? Thanks for all the great content. Cheers. End quote. All right, great questions, and I feel like we have not talked about living pathways in a while, so that's fun. And considering I am reseeding some of my own pathways now and managing others, it's good timing. So thanks, Billy. So I suppose alfalfa could work, but I honestly have not tried that one. In my experience, out of the many random things I have tried, clover is just the one that survives. And so for that reason, it's the one I just now generally suggest. Now, you could add in some different clovers like red and yellow, but by and large, white clover is going to make the most sense in the pathways, and it's also going to outcompete most everything else that you try to grow there. However, this obviously doesn't do anything for your diversity problem, and especially since you are already using the clover. So there are some things to be learned from what else competes with it naturally. On our farm, what thrives that is not clover are things like plantain and violets. Those come through the clover pretty easily. In the early spring, somewhat to my annoyance, are things like purple nettle and chickweed, which go bonkers in our paths in April. To crowd those out, perhaps something early in the spring, like perhaps a overwintered lacy phacelia could fit there nicely, or maybe it's like sweet alyssum. Non-spreading grasses are also something that compete well, such as perennial rye, perhaps. In the summer, there's also potential for things like flax, though, again, this is not one I've tried. And or you could maybe throw some, sorghum Sudan grass or something that can take a high mowing. That is a mowing that's several inches off the ground, like 6 if you can do it. The nice thing with grasses is they add some underground biodiversity, but also spiders tend to like that really hard structure, so that the habitat boost that you get is nice compared to the tender legumes that things like clover. There are, of course, thousands and thousands of plants out there that I have not tried, and almost certainly there are a few that would fit in there nicely alongside the clovers. I've not fully given up on looking for new crops to fill that space, but I've been pleased enough with the cost and the management of white clover to not feel compelled to really push it. This fall, though, I am definitely in need of something to overwinter and knock back the chickweed a bit, which has taken my predilection for allowing plants in the pathway to kind of go as an invitation to just completely take over, which is kind of that like give them an inch and they take a mile thing. Anyway, I know that's not super helpful, but I also think it's worth not overthinking it too much. If you want to use those areas at the end of your beds for a little diversity, perhaps, use that chamomile and maybe some yarrow or comfrey and native grasses and just whatever native flowers you like, and use those as native areas for beneficials and not so much as living pathways. Living pathways are great in my context, but there is a constant tension there. It's a little bit like we talked about a couple days ago with the letting the water in stuff. Stuff just wants to grow in the paths, and instead of fighting it, I'm choosing what's growing there and how tall. Clover seems to be the one crop that gets this relationship the best for us so far. Anyway, I will keep exploring living pathways and the plants that fit there, and folks can feel free to add their opinions and ideas in the comments. Otherwise, let's wrap this thing up with one last word from our friends at Rimmel Greenhouse Systems. Whether you're growing tomatoes for market, flowers in the spring, or vegetables for your family, growing in a high tunnel protected from the weather provides the right environment for a harvest you can count on. Rimmel greenhouses are strong, durable, and easy to assemble, offering you the quality you need to grow productively year-round. The team of experts at Rimmel Greenhouse Systems will be your trusted partners to ensure you get exceptional value from your greenhouse or high tunnel investment. Visit Rimmel.com today to get growing. Don't forget, we are now officially a 501c3 here at No-Till Growers, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Find the links for how to kick in there on the show notes. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's always an easy way to help us out. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor this show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at no-tillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and to the team at No-Till Growers for their support. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook or the Seed Farmer at no-tillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or sign up in the month of April, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Alicia K. Yeah. We'll pretend it's 2 people. Okay, so to recap our story for the week, there is a secret dimension below a grocery store co-op that is in New Hampshire. I mean, obviously, where in this dimension, anyone can grow anything they want. But the head wizard has descended to address a recent blight affecting the population there. The blight that the residents are coming up against is that, and remember, they can grow whatever they need here. They grow anything they want. So the blight is that they will grow a hat, which takes approximately, 45 days to maturity in their realm. And instead of a hat, though, they get a hair comb or, a copy of Anna Karenina. Or they'll try to grow a blanket, but the fruit of the plant will actually be an oven. So there is some clear wacky cross-pollination going on, and no one really can quite figure out why or how, but it started to become a problem because things, take a pretty good amount of time to grow. And, at the end of the season, if you don't have what you plan to grow, that can be a problem. The residents just have a ton of random items now and nothing they really need. And the wizard suspects he knows exactly what's going on and tracks the issue to a shack on the edge of the dimension. What he finds there, that is for tomorrow, which is called Friday, and our conclusion. Thanks for watching and or listening. We will see you then